The bullies didn't know he was a martial arts champion. What would you do if the very people who humiliated you discovered you were more powerful than they could ever imagine? Daniel was quiet, unassuming, and always kept his head down. To the bullies at his school, he was the perfect target, a skinny, bookish boy who seemed defenseless. They taunted him daily, their laughter echoing in the hallways. What they didn't know was that Daniel had a secret, one that would leave them speechless and trembling with fear. Daniel shuffled through the crowded school hallway, clutching his books tightly to his chest. His shoulders hunched, his eyes glued to the floor. He tried to avoid any attention. But no matter how much he tried to blend in, he couldn't escape them, Ethan and his gang. Ethan, the self-proclaimed king of the school, had a knack for finding people's weaknesses. Daniel's quiet demeanor and slightly awkward gait made him an easy target. "Hey, noodle arms!" Ethan's voice rang out and the hallway grew silent. Everyone turned to watch as Ethan strutted toward Daniel, a smug grin plastered across his face. Daniel froze, his knuckles whitening as he gripped his books. He didn't reply, hoping Ethan would lose interest. "Look at him!" Ethan laughed, gesturing to his friends. "What's wrong, Daniel? Too scared to talk?" The crowd around them erupted into laughter. Ethan pushed Daniel's books to the ground, scattering papers everywhere. Daniel knelt to pick them up, but Ethan's foot landed on one of the papers. "Oops, did I ruin your homework?" he sneered. The humiliation didn't stop there. Every day, Daniel endured something new, name-calling, pranks, even getting tripped in the cafeteria. The other students either laughed along or looked away, unwilling to stand up to Ethan's gang. What none of them knew was that Daniel wasn't as weak as he seemed. Daniel walked home that day, his head spinning with frustration. The laughter, the taunts, Ethan's smug face, they echoed in his mind like a broken record. He clenched his fists, his nails digging into his palms. He stopped in front of a small dojo tucked between a laundromat and a cafe, its dimly lit sign reading Kobayashi Martial Arts Academy. To everyone else, it was just another hole-in-the-wall place. To Daniel, it was his sanctuary. Pushing open the door, he stepped inside and was immediately greeted by the familiar scent of sweat and the rhythmic thudding of punches hitting pads. Master Kobayashi, a stern yet kind elderly man, looked up from where he was instructing a group of students. "Rough day, Daniel?" the man asked, his voice calm but piercing. Daniel nodded, his jaw tight. "I don't understand, Master. I do nothing to provoke them. I stay quiet, I avoid them, and still they come after me." Master Kobayashi studied him for a moment. "It's not about what you do or don't do. Bullies thrive on control and fear. They see you as someone who won't fight back." Daniel's head dropped. "But I can't fight them. If I use what I've learned here, I'll be no better than they are." Master Kobayashi placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder. "Discipline is what sets a true martial artist apart. But there's a difference between violence and self-defense. Knowing when to act is part of your training." Daniel nodded, though doubt lingered in his heart. He had spent years training under Master Kobayashi, mastering techniques most people couldn't dream of. Yet he had promised himself, and his late father, that he would never use his skills recklessly. But things were getting worse. That day, Ethan had crossed a line. Daniel could still hear the laughter ringing in his ears, could still feel the sting of humiliation. He wondered how much more he could take before something inside him snapped. The days passed, and the bullying only intensified. Ethan and his gang seemed to make it their mission to break Daniel. From stealing his lunch to shoving him into lockers, their antics grew more brazen. One afternoon, things reached a boiling point. Daniel had stayed late to finish a project in the school library. As he walked toward the empty parking lot, he heard footsteps behind him. "Hey, Noodle Arms! Leaving so soon?" Ethan's voice cut through the air. Daniel turned slowly, his heart sinking as he saw Ethan flanked by his usual gang. They had cornered him, blocking his path to the main road. "What do you want?" Daniel asked, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. Ethan smirked. "Oh, just thought we'd give you a proper send-off for the weekend. You know, show you how much we care." One of the boys grabbed Daniel's backpack and tossed it to the ground. Another pushed him hard against a wall. "Why don't you fight back, huh?" Ethan taunted, leaning in close. "Oh wait, you can't. You're nothing but a coward." Daniel's jaw tightened. He could feel his resolve slipping. The promise he'd made to himself, never to use his training unless absolutely necessary, wavered. Then Ethan made his biggest mistake. He grabbed Daniel by the collar and whispered, "Maybe we'll pay a visit to that little dojo you're always hiding in. See if your old sensei is as weak as you are." Something snapped inside Daniel. He took a deep breath, his mind going quiet. "Let go," Daniel said, his voice calm but commanding. Ethan laughed. "Or what? You gonna—" Before he could finish, Daniel moved. In a single, fluid motion, he broke Ethan's grip and stepped back, his stance suddenly steady and confident. The gang froze, their laughter replaced by uneasy glances. "What the—" one of them muttered. Daniel's posture shifted subtly, a stance his sensei had drilled into him countless times. To the untrained eye, it was just a defensive position. But to anyone who understood martial arts, it was a signal Daniel was prepared to fight. Ethan lunged at him, but Daniel sidestepped effortlessly, using the bully's own momentum to send him stumbling forward. Another boy tried to grab him from behind, but Daniel twisted free, his movements precise and controlled. In less than a minute, the gang was on the ground, groaning in pain and disbelief. Daniel hadn't thrown a single punch, just skillful blocks and counters that left them humiliated. Ethan struggled to his feet, his face pale. What are you?" he stammered. Daniel picked up his backpack, slinging it over his shoulder. "Just someone you shouldn't underestimate." He walked away, leaving the bullies stunned and speechless. The next Monday, the school buzzed with whispers. The once dominant Ethan and his gang now walked the hallways with their heads down, their confidence shattered. For the first time, the bullies were avoiding Daniel. In the cafeteria, students stared as Daniel entered, the usual timid shuffle in his step replaced with quiet confidence. Whispers floated around the room. "Did you hear what happened? Ethan tried to mess with him, and Daniel took them all down. Martial arts or something. They didn't stand a chance." Daniel ignored the stares, sitting at an empty table in the corner. He hadn't meant for things to spiral like this. All he wanted was to be left alone, but the attention didn't stop there. That afternoon, as he walked to the dojo, a group of students followed him at a distance. They lingered near the entrance, peeking through the windows, whispering among themselves. Inside, Master Kobayashi noticed the change immediately. "You've done something," the old man said, crossing his arms. "Haven't you?" Daniel hesitated, then nodded. "I had no choice. They wouldn't stop." Master Kobayashi studied him for a long moment before speaking. "Defending yourself is not wrong, Daniel. But what you do next will define who you are. Do you seek revenge or do you seek peace?" Daniel frowned. "I just want them to leave me alone." "Then you've already won," Master Kobayashi said with a faint smile. "Remember, true strength lies in restraint. Use your skills wisely and others will follow your example." Ethan, however, wasn't so quick to accept defeat. Humiliated and angry, he began spreading rumors, twisting the story to make himself the victim. He claimed Daniel had ambushed them, making him look like the aggressor. One afternoon, Daniel was called to the principal's office. "I've received reports about a fight," the principal said sternly. "Ethan and his friends say you attacked them. Care to explain?" Daniel's heart sank. The memory of that evening played in his mind. How he had only acted to defend himself. "I didn't attack them," Daniel said calmly. "They cornered me. I defended myself without hurting anyone." The principal leaned back in her chair, scrutinizing him. "That's not what they're saying." Before Daniel could respond, there was a knock at the door. To his surprise, Another student entered, a quiet girl from his class who rarely spoke up. "I saw everything," she said firmly. "Ethan and his friends started it. Daniel didn't do anything wrong." The principal sighed, clearly torn, but eventually nodded. "All right, you're free to go, Daniel, but let's not have any more incidents like this." As Daniel left the office, he felt a mix of relief and gratitude. For the first time, someone had stood up for him. Maybe, just maybe, things were starting to change. Word of Daniel's encounter with Ethan spread like wildfire, but the story had shifted. Now, the narrative wasn't about a fight. It was about how Daniel, the quiet boy everyone underestimated, had stood his ground and revealed a strength no one expected. Something remarkable began to happen. Students who had once ignored Daniel now approached him, offering kind words or simply nodding in acknowledgement. "Hey man," one boy said as he passed Daniel in the hallway. "What you did, that was awesome." Daniel didn't respond with arrogance or pride. He simply nodded and continued on his way, his demeanor humble. Meanwhile, Ethan's reputation plummeted. The once feared bully found himself the target of whispers and side glances. People began to avoid him, unwilling to associate with someone who had been so publicly humiliated. Even Ethan's own gang started to distance themselves. One by one, his friends stopped sitting with him at lunch, leaving him isolated. Ethan, consumed by anger and embarrassment, couldn't let it go. One afternoon, he confronted Daniel again. But this time it was different. Daniel was walking to his locker when Ethan appeared, his expression a mix of frustration and desperation. "You think you're better than me now?" he spat. "Just because you know some fancy moves?" Daniel turned to face him, calm as ever. "I don't think I'm better than anyone, but I'm not afraid of you anymore." Ethan flinched at the words. For a moment, he looked like he wanted to throw a punch, but something stopped him. Maybe it was the memory of how effortlessly Daniel had defended himself, or maybe it was the realization that violence wouldn't fix his broken reputation. Instead, Ethan muttered under his breath and stormed off, leaving Daniel standing there. Back at the dojo, Daniel shared the incident with Master Kobayashi. "Ethan still hasn't learned his lesson," Daniel admitted. "But I didn't react. I just walked away." Master Kobayashi smiled approvingly. "Walking away from a fight takes more strength than engaging in one. You've shown growth, Daniel. That is the true mark of a warrior." Elsewhere, something unexpected was happening. Inspired by Daniel's story, other students began to stand up to bullying in their own ways. A shy girl, who had always been teased for her weight, started joining Daniel at lunch, finding courage in his quiet strength. A boy, who had been pushed around in gym class, began training at the same dojo, eager to learn self-defense. Even the teachers noticed a shift in the school's atmosphere. The fear and tension that had once hung over the hallways seemed to dissipate. Daniel hadn't just defended himself, he'd sparked a ripple effect, one that encouraged others to embrace their own strength and stand against injustice. Weeks had passed since the confrontation, and life had settled into a new rhythm. Daniel still kept to himself, but the fear and humiliation that once defined his days had vanished. More importantly, he had found a quiet strength within himself, one that no bully could take away. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Daniel sat cross-legged on the wooden floor of the dojo, staring at the rows of framed photographs on the wall. Each picture told a story of strength, discipline, and resilience, values his late father had cherished and passed down to him. Master Kobayashi approached, his footsteps soft but deliberate. "You seem deep in thought, Daniel. What's on your mind?" Daniel looked up, a small smile tugging at his lips. "I've been thinking about everything that's happened. For so long, I let people like Ethan define how I saw myself. I thought being quiet and invisible would protect me, but it only made me a target." Master Kobayashi nodded, his expression thoughtful. "And now?" Now, I realize that strength isn't about fighting or showing off. It's about knowing who you are and standing firm, even when it's hard, Daniel said. I didn't want to hurt Ethan or anyone else. I just wanted to stop running from my fear. The old sensei's eyes gleamed with pride. You've learned the most important lesson of all. True strength isn't measured by how many battles you win, but by the battles you choose to fight and the ones you choose to walk away from. At school, the changes Daniel had sparked continued to grow. Ethan, once the school's most feared figure, had retreated into the background. Without his gang and his reputation, he seemed like just another student. Daniel, on the other hand, had gained something far more valuable than popularity: respect. But he remained humble, using his experience to help others. When a freshman approached him in the cafeteria, nervously asking for advice on how to deal with a bully, Daniel simply smiled and said, "The best way to beat a bully is to believe in yourself first. Once you do, they lose all their power over you." That evening, Daniel stood outside the dojo after class, watching the stars begin to dot the night sky. For the first time in years, he felt at peace. He pulled out a small, worn photograph of his father, who had introduced him to martial arts all those years ago. "Thank you," Daniel whispered, "for teaching me how to fight, not with my fists, but with my heart." As he tucked the photo back into his pocket, Daniel smiled. He knew there would be other challenges ahead, but he was no longer afraid. Whatever life threw his way, he was ready. Daniel's story reminds us that strength comes in many forms. It's not about how much power you have, but how you use it, and how you stay true to yourself in the process. What about you? Have you ever been underestimated or faced challenges that pushed you to your limits? Share your story in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications for more inspiring stories like this one. Thank you for watching, and remember, your true strength lies within you.